The woods don't care about you. That's the thing people forget. They go in with their maps and their gear and their confidence. And they forget that everything out there, every tree, every shadow, every sound existed long before they arrived. And it will exist long after they leave. If they leave. Tonight I have 3 stories. 3 people who went into the woods and came back. Different. Changed in ways they still can't fully explain. Ryan went in to photograph wildlife. He found something photographing him back. Sienna went in to clear her head after the worst year of her life. Something out there seemed to know exactly what she was carrying. And Joel just wanted one night alone under the trees. He got that. He also got something he never asked for and has never been able to shake. 3 stories, 3 woods, one thing in common. None of them went back. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and whatever happens, don't go looking for that sound outside your window. Story 1, submitted by Ryan, 31 years old, wildlife photographer from rural Montana. My name is Ryan, and I've been photographing wildlife for almost a decade. Not professionally, I have a desk job, spreadsheets, conference calls, all of it. But on weekends, whenever I can manage it, I go out into the forests of western Montana with my camera and I disappear for a while. It's the only thing that makes the rest of the week feel manageable. I know those woods. That's important for you to understand. I'm not some weekend tourist who got spooked by a raccoon in the dark. I've spent hundreds of nights out there. I know what a bear sounds like moving through brush. I know what a mountain lion's track looks like in soft ground. I know the difference between the wind in pine needles and something breathing. The October I'm talking about, I had a 4-day weekend and I decided to push further east than I usually go. The forest gets older out there, the trees bigger, the canopy thicker, the undergrowth strange in the way that old-growth forests get, full of fallen giants and root systems the size of small buildings. Less foot traffic, better wildlife. I set up camp Friday evening at the edge of a small clearing, maybe 2 miles off the nearest trail. No phone signal, no other tents. Just me, my gear, and the particular silence that settles over old forests at dusk, that held breath quiet before the nocturnal world takes over. Saturday was perfect. I photographed a black bear and her 2 cubs at a distance of about 40 meters. A great gray owl at dawn. Tracks from what I was nearly certain was a wolverine, which would have been exceptional for that area. I went to bed Saturday night genuinely happy, which is rarer than it sounds. Sunday morning, I noticed the camera trap I'd set up near a game trail had been moved. Not knocked over, moved. Repositioned. It was still attached to the tree, still pointed outward, but the angle had changed by maybe 30 degrees. I'd mounted it carefully, the way I always do, checking the frame before I left it. Whatever had adjusted it hadn't done so accidentally. The adjustment was deliberate, precise. It was now pointing directly at my camp. I told myself it was probably a bear. Bears interact with trail cameras constantly. They smell the residual human scent and investigate. Sometimes they knock them sideways. I'd never seen one rotate a camera to a new angle before, but I filed it under explainable and kept moving. The second thing I noticed was the tracks. Around my camp, in the soft earth near the fire ring, there were footprints. Human footprints. Bare feet. From the look of them, no tread pattern, just the clean impression of a foot in soft ground. They circled the camp in a wide arc, maybe 8 or 10 meters out. They didn't approach the tent. They just circled. And then they stopped at the tree line, as if whoever made them had simply stepped back into the forest and ceased to exist. I was 2 miles from the nearest trail. The nearest town was 40 minutes by car. I stood there for a long time looking at those prints, and the silence around me felt suddenly different. Not the comfortable silence of a familiar forest, but the watchful silence of something that knows you're there. I decided to check the trail camera footage. The camera captured motion-triggered video clips, 30 seconds each. I sat in my tent with my laptop and went through the files from the previous night, starting at dusk. The first few clips were normal. A deer at 8:47 p.m., wind moving the branches at 11:20 p.m., triggering a false positive. Nothing at 1:15 a.m., and then at 3:44 a.m., the camera triggered. The clip was 30 seconds long. For the first 20 seconds, nothing moved in frame. Just the dark tree line, the edge of my camp visible in the background, my tent a pale shape in the darkness. Then, at the 21-second mark, something stepped into frame from the left. It was dark. The camera's night vision gave everything that green-gray cast that makes distances hard to judge. But it was tall, standing upright, and it was standing completely still, facing the camera, facing my tent. It stood there for the remaining 9 seconds of the clip. Just stood. And right at the end, right before the clip cut off, it turned its head. Not toward the camera, away from it, like it had heard something, like it had heard me inside the tent, moving in my sleep. The next clip triggered at 3:45 a.m. 1 minute later, the frame was empty. I packed up camp in the dark. I know that sounds extreme. It was 4 a.m. I had no flashlight bright enough to navigate 2 miles of old-growth forest safely, and I packed up anyway. Something had been standing 15 feet from my tent watching me sleep. Whatever rational explanation existed for that, I didn't want to be there when I found it. I made it back to the trail by 6 a.m. By 7 a.m. I was at my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time before I started the engine, watching the tree line in my rearview mirror. Nothing came out of the trees, but I had the absolute bone-level certainty that something was watching me from inside them, that it had walked me out, that it was standing just beyond the tree line, in the dark, watching me drive away. When I got home, I uploaded all the footage to my computer and went through every clip again, more carefully this time. I enhanced the 3:44 a.m. clip as much as my software allowed. The figure was tall, proportioned like a person but taller than it should have been, given the trees I could use as reference. It was not wearing anything reflective. I could not make out a face. But in the enhanced version of the last frame, the one where it turns its head, I can see its eyes catch the infrared light of the camera. Animals' eyes catch infrared. Humans don't. I have not gone back to those woods. I have not deleted the footage. I'm not sure which of those decisions says more about me. The next story is different, because whatever Sienna found in those woods seemed to already know her name. Story 2. This story was submitted by Sienna, 27 years old, from Asheville, North Carolina. My name is Sienna, and I want to start by saying that I'm not someone who believes in the supernatural. I'm a nurse. I work night shifts in an emergency department. I believe in what I can see and measure and document. I'm telling you this because what happened to me in the Pisgah National Forest last spring doesn't fit inside any framework I have for the world, and I need you to understand that I've tried very hard to make it fit. I went into the forest alone on a Thursday. For days, 3 nights, a route I'd planned, carefully marked trails, known water sources, bailout points every few miles. I'd been through the hardest year of my life. Lost my mother in January. A relationship ended badly in March. I was running on coffee and obligation, and I needed to be somewhere that didn't have walls. The first day was exactly what I needed. The Pisgah Forest in April is extraordinary. The rhododendron just coming in, the waterfalls running high from snowmelt, the air that clean cold that you only get at elevation in early spring. I covered 12 miles and made camp feeling genuinely better than I had in months. The grief was still there, but it was quieter out here, like the forest was giving it somewhere to go. I cooked dinner, watched the last of the light leave the ridge above me, and went to sleep feeling something close to peace. I woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of someone saying my name, not shouting, not calling out, speaking, at a normal conversational volume, close enough that whoever it was had to be right outside my tent. I lay completely still. My mind ran through explanations immediately. Another hiker, someone in distress, sound carrying strangely from a distance. I waited. The forest was absolutely silent around the voice. No footsteps, no rustling, just the voice and then the silence that came after it. I told myself I'd been dreaming. Grief does things to sleep, vivid auditory experiences, half-waking states where sounds from the waking world fold into dreams. I'd had my mother's voice in my ears constantly since January. I had no reason to think this was different. I went back to sleep. The second night, it happened again. 2:17 a.m. this time, I checked my watch. Same thing. My name, spoken at conversational volume, from directly outside the tent. This time I was not asleep. I had been lying awake for an hour, unable to settle, listening to the forest. I unzipped the tent. The clearing was empty. Moonlight through the canopy, my fire ring with its cold ash. The tree line on all sides dark, still, and absolutely silent. No person, no animal, nothing that could have made a human voice. I stood outside the tent for 10 minutes. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. The forest had that particular quality of silence that feels less like absence and more like held breath. Like everything around you has gone quiet on purpose. Then, from somewhere deep in the trees to the north, a branch snapped. A single, clean crack, like something heavy shifting its weight. Then silence again. I went back into the tent. I did not sleep for the rest of that night. In the morning, I found footprints in the soft ground outside my tent. They were not mine. They were bare feet, approaching from the north, stopping 2 meters from the tent entrance, and then retreating back the way they came. The third night, I was ready to leave at first light. I decided, whatever was happening, whatever reasonable explanation existed, I wasn't equipped to deal with it alone, and I wasn't willing to spend another sleepless night waiting. I was packed and lying in my sleeping bag fully clothed, just waiting for dawn, when it happened for the third time.
2:03 a.m.
My name, right outside the tent. But this time it was different. This time the voice said something else after it. 2 words I will not repeat here because I have repeated them enough times in my own head, in the dark, in the months since. 2 words that no one outside of my immediate family could have known. Something private, something my mother used to say to me. I did not open the tent. I lay there with my hand over my mouth, and I did not make a sound until the sky outside the tent wall began to go gray. I hiked out in 3 hours. I drove straight home without stopping. I didn't tell anyone what happened for 6 weeks, and when I finally did, when I told my sister, she went very quiet on the phone. Then she said, "I had a dream about Mom the night you were out there. She was standing in a forest. She kept saying your name. I don't know what to do with that. I'm a nurse. I believe in what I can measure. I have no measurement for this. This last story is the one I keep coming back to, because Joel heard it too, and he got it on recording." Story 3. This story was sent in by Joel, age 35, from rural Tennessee. My name is Joel. I grew up on the edge of the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee, which means I grew up in and around forests. Not visiting them, living alongside them, the way you do when the nearest town is 20 minutes away and the woods behind your house go on for miles without hitting a road. I've been hunting, fishing, and camping in those forests my entire life. I am not easily rattled. Last summer, I decided to spend a long weekend doing something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. A proper solo camp, off-trail, no destination, just walking until I found somewhere I liked and stopping there. No agenda, no mileage goals, just me and the trees and whatever the days decided to bring. I found my spot on the first afternoon, a flat shelf of rock above a creek bend, sheltered on 3 sides by old oaks, a clear view of the sky directly above. Perfect. I set up camp, collected wood, and spent the evening doing nothing at all, which is harder than it sounds when you're used to filling every hour. By the time darkness came, I was genuinely relaxed in a way I hadn't been in years. Work had been brutal. My father had been sick. I'd been carrying a weight for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like not to have it. But out here, with the creek below me and the fire going and nothing requiring anything from me, I could feel it starting to lift. I had my phone with me, no signal out there, but I use it as a recorder sometimes. I like to capture the ambient sound of places I camp. Creek sounds, wind in leaves, birdsong at dawn. I set it to record and placed it on the rock beside me while I sat by the fire, just capturing the night. Around midnight, I started to feel like something had changed. Not a sound, not a sight, just a feeling, the particular animal awareness that something in your environment has shifted. I felt it before in the woods. Usually it means a deer has come to the creek. Once it meant a bear had entered the clearing behind me. Your body knows before your brain does. I sat still and listened. The creek, the fire settling, wind in the canopy, and then, beneath all of it, something else. A low sound, not quite a voice, not quite an animal. Something that occupied the space between those two things and refused to be categorized. It was coming from the tree line to the west, maybe 30 meters out. It rose and fell in a rhythm that was almost like breathing, but longer, slower, like something much larger than me taking very deliberate breaths. I didn't move. I've learned that the worst thing you can do when you don't know what you're dealing with is move suddenly. I sat by the fire and I listened, and I told myself it was the wind, and I knew it wasn't the wind. The sound moved, not away from me, parallel to me. It tracked along the western tree line from north to south, slowly, at a pace that suggested something walking on two legs. I could not hear footsteps. Whatever was making the sound was moving silently, which is very difficult to do in a Tennessee forest at night. The undergrowth is thick. The fallen leaves are deep. Things make noise when they move through it. Deer make noise. Bears make noise. People make noise. This made no noise, only the sound. That low, rhythmic between things sound. It completed its arc north to south along the tree line, and then stopped. Southern edge of the clearing, 30 meters out, and then it just stayed there. I could hear it breathing, slow, patient, like something that had found what it was looking for and had no intention of leaving. I fed the fire, higher, bigger. Fire keeps things away. That's what you tell yourself. But the breathing didn't change when the flames rose. Whatever was out there wasn't afraid of the light. I sat there for what felt like hours. The sound never moved, never came closer, never left, just breathed 30 meters away in the dark, with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. And then something changed. The breathing stopped. Complete silence. 5 seconds. 10. I gripped the log I'd been feeding the fire with and I did not move. Then it started again, but closer. Not 30 meters. 20. Maybe less. It had moved without making a single sound. I don't have another word for it. I know how that sounds. But it spoke. Not words, nothing I could parse as language, but structured sound. Deliberate. Inflected. The shape of communication without the content of it. Like hearing a conversation through a wall in a language you don't know. You understand that meaning is being transmitted. You understand none of the meaning. And then it stopped. Complete silence. The breathing gone. The sound gone. The creek still running below me. The fire still crackling. And the forest as empty as if nothing had ever been there. I did not sleep. I sat by that fire until sunrise, feeding it every 30 minutes, watching the western tree line until the light came and made it just trees again. I packed up and left at first light. On the drive home, I remembered the recording. I pulled over on a county road with the windows up and played it back from the beginning. 2 hours of ambient creek sound. Fire. Wind. Exactly what you'd expect. And then, starting at the 147 mark, the other sound. Exactly as I remembered it. The low, rhythmic, between things sound, moving along the tree line. Clearer on the recording than it had been in person. Somehow, the phone's microphone had caught frequencies my ears had missed. I listened to the whole thing. The arc, the stillness at the south end, the 2 hours of breathing, and at the 3:52 mark it spoke. I've played that section of the recording to 4 people I trust. Not one of them has been able to tell me what it is. One of them, my cousin, who spent 8 years as a wildlife biologist, listened to it 3 times and then handed my phone back without saying anything. I asked him what he thought it was. He said, "I don't know, but play it again and listen to the last 3 seconds." Played it again. I listened to the last 3 seconds. At the very end of the vocalization, right before the silence, there is a sound that is almost indistinguishable from a word. My name.